Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live. And tonight we have Ty Olsson as our special guest, who has been in way too much stuff to list right now. How you doing, Ty?
I'm good, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing great. And as I told Ty, I've really been looking forward to this conversation. And let's get right to it. Planet of the Apes. I'm a huge Planet of the Apes fan. I mean, I remember as a little kid, Charleston
Yeah.
Heston, sorry, and that amazing movie. And the reason I became such a big Planet of the Apes fan at such a young age was because my older brother loved Planet of the Apes, and it just became ingrained in me. Uh, were you a fan of the franchise before you took on any role in it?
I was, but I don't think I was a rabid fan. But I remember watching the movies and enjoying them. I didn't watch a lot of television growing up. I mean, I'm aging myself here, but I grew up in some rural areas that you had like three channels. So you watched. I'm Canadian. Watch Hockey Night in Canada
Yeah.
and the little Oboe, and that was about it. The majority of what you watched. So, but I do remember watching it throughout the years. But I got more acquainted with it, obviously, as I started auditioning for roles on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those classics. You can't avoid it. Uh,
Yeah.
Now, the reboots, all of them, are amazing. The way they brought this franchise back to life is absolutely phenomenal. When you eventually did see the original and and you saw the old movies and you compared it to what they were doing with the reboots, what did you think about the reboots?
I agree with you. I think they did a spectacular job reinventing the whole premise and theory of how it happened and in the first place, which was really creepy. That first movie was a really creepy idea about how we did it to ourselves, and
Yeah.
especially it kind of in a time when we're in a global pandemic too, and it's the idea of, and I don't believe this, but the idea of a virus, an experimental virus, getting out of a lab and all that, and right,
Here
it's
we
pretty
are.
tough. The science is kind of scary, interesting in these movies, and I think the reboot really made the most of that.
And you know what I found fascinating is the Easter eggs that they put in that first one, like with the space launch,
Yeah.
and they sort of tied it together. I love that. I love those little Easter eggs that they put in the movies. Now there are quite a few people out there that believe that the apes throughout the in the new reboots are completely CGI. They're not even real people. It's all computer generated. They cannot be further. That cannot be further from the truth. The
Yeah. No. No.
people that play the roles, and your role in War was Red Donkey, and we're going to get more to him in a second. But explain to us the process of turning the actor like yourself into a gorilla.
Well, these days it's evolved so quickly over the last couple of decades. From like Lord of the Rings, it's just from then on, it's just push the new technology towards animating actors. And the most famous actor, Andy Serkis, has been at the forefront of a lot of the performances. They have it's like a gray suit, a very unflattering gray suit that has white dots on it, and then they put the dots. Make up white dots on your face as well. My understanding is the computer catches those dots as kind of mobility points, so that they know they can take the CGI animation and connect it to those dots. So we're in suits and we're acting the whole thing out. They just layer the image of the ape on top of us, and it's kind of cool to watch. A few weeks into shooting, they finally got us. When we got into the studio, they could put up a monitor so we could see ourselves in not fully animated, not fully done, but rendered. But we could see a gorilla moving around as we moved. I could move and I could do a dance, and the gorilla would do a dance. It was, it was so trippy to be part of that process.
Now, Andy Serkis, who plays Caesar,
Hmm.
and he was also in the Lord of the Rings and all that. Great actor. I saw a special after the first Planet of the Apes movie came out of him doing exactly what you described. It looked to be very physically intense. Uh,
It is.
would you say it was this has been the most exhausting, physically exhausting role you ever had to do?
Absolutely, and I'll tell you what's interesting is Mike. So we did like an ape school for 3 weeks before I had 4 auditions for the part, and then we did a 3-week ape school. And you'd be scheduled for the entire day, but after about 2 hours, your body was shot.
Mm-hmm.
You were like, I'm out. The quadrupeding with the the braces that they give you, they're like, so you're in this position that you never use, and you're hunkered down, so your thighs and your buttocks and stuff are just working all the time, your back, and it was pretty grueling. But we did enough of it in the rehearsal that come shoot time, it was second nature. So
Now, when you were doing that training, who did they bring in to help train you guys in your movements to imitate the apes?
Terry Notary. I hope I got his last name right. He's been there since the beginning, and he kind of developed the system. And a fantastic stunt actor, and he kind of led the ape school. And then he also plays. Oh, I can't remember the character, but he's also been one of the characters in the movie for since the beginning.
That is so cool. And
Yeah.
did they have anybody who's trained in handling primates like chimpanzees, gorillas, or anything like that?
No, no. I think we did our individual research about how to act and stuff like that. But I can't remember if we had a coach. But I think it was just him for the physicality.
Okay.
In 3 weeks, we covered a lot of ground. It's an interesting thing, though, because when you're going in to play, we weren't going in to play strictly animals. You're going in to play this hybrid, highly intelligent, kind of almost like a mixed breed of gorilla. So in a way, it's like, yes, we wanted to do our research and look at real chimpanzees and primates, but at the end of the day, we also had to realize they have so many human characteristics that it's not all applicable.
Yeah.
And in fact, my character, we decided that we'd make him primarily stand up. And even though I trained in it, I didn't actually quadruped in the movie, because we decided that Red Donkey, being a turncoat, was trying to be human.
Mm-hmm.
So he stood the whole time. And there was I can't remember what zoo it was, but we found an example of a gorilla that in a zoo that would walk on his hind legs primarily.
Wow.
So we used that as a reference for my character, because we decided my character should never be quadrupeding. I kind of decided, and Matt Reeves kind of agreed. I'm like, he should never walk. If he thinks he's trying to be with the humans, then let him be as human as possible. But the sad irony is, of course, the humans were never going to see him as one of theirs.
Never accept him.
Being a traitor and a turncoat, his own kind were never going to accept him either.
That's true.
Which, to me, is one of the interesting pieces of the story with that character.
And we're going to get to more of that in a second. Let's go back to the first one, where you played a human. You played Chief John Hamill, I believe your character's name was. That third act in Rise of Planet of the Apes, wow, with the Golden Gate Bridge, you being in the helicopter, in the lab, eventually ending up on the Golden Gate Bridge. Absolutely crazy, awesome third act to any movie. Yeah. What was it like shooting that? Was it just, the scale, I can't even imagine the amount of people, the budget, the shooting. What was that experience like?
They had a huge animatronic skeleton of a helicopter built on gimbals, so that they could play the whole thing. How it bounced, how it moved, how it flew, how it rose. It was like being on a roller coaster. It was like being on an amusement ride. I can't even begin to guess what the cost of that thing was. But none of it was, we had, I think, one shot in an actual helicopter, and the rest was all done on this gimbal against a green screen. But it allowed you to have that motion, instead of like, the old Star Treks where everybody leans to the left. Oh, we're falling. Oh, we're falling. You didn't have to do any of that. This thing jerked you around like, I'm sure it could give you whiplash if they wanted to crank it up to 10. What's interesting is, although I've played lots of them, in a funny way, sometimes the cops and the guards and stuff can be some of the harder roles, because they're expected to be military-esque, and they're expected to not have a lot of kind of, they're supposed to fill a role that, and so sometimes it's a little bit harder to kind of grab onto things. What's his journey? What's his story? How does he feel about this? So in its own way, that character was as challenging as as playing Red Donkey those characters, they're just they live in between worlds.
Mm-hmm.
They're a bit of a service character, but they also have to have a life and goals and fears and wants and needs of their own. But they're also, they're not central to the plot to a point where they're just usually not written with a lot of
I
life.
totally get it. Yeah, yeah.
So you have to find the life within them and on less information. Where if the bigger the role is, the more well written it is, the more information you have, the more depth that's inherently in the character, the more you have to pull from. So it's interesting. It was, they're challenging in different ways.
You got to create your own backstory to do your job.
A lot more stuff you have to bring to the table.
Yeah,
that's not peppered in there, and that you can go, oh, I'll take that. You got to go, okay, I got to make decisions on my own for this one.
So walk us through, how did you get the part of Chief John Hamill? Obviously you auditioned. Did you specifically audition for that part? Did you get called in for just a very vague audition and that's the part they gave you?
I'll tell you, it's a bit of a funny story, actually, and I had forgotten this until you just asked that question. So I had gone in for that role, and I was really busy at the time. I'd been working on a ton of shows, and one of the things that when you're on shows, like if I have a show with a beard on, and then I audition for another show, then they keep the beard, and sometimes you'll end up like having a beard for 2 years because you go from one show to another show to another show, and you can't cut it, and you can't cut your hair, or they always cut the hair and stuff. So I was so busy at the time that I hadn't been able to cut my own hair or do anything that was my choice. So I just, for a brief period, had a lull in work. So I decided to give myself a mohawk. Because why not? I haven't had a mohawk since I was a teenager. So I dyed it blonde, shaved into a mohawk, and I literally the next day, I had an audition for Planet of the Apes. And I went, oh, damn it, I'm not going to shave. I've only had it one day. So I thought, okay, and they're of course very secretive. So I didn't know if I was playing an ape. I didn't know if I was playing a human. Because in the old movies, like the cop could have been a gorilla, mm-hmm. right? Like that was a literal, So I went, okay, I'm not going to worry about the hair because I don't know what the plan is. So I go in and I do the role, I kill it, and then I hear back like 2 days later, oh, they couldn't see past the mohawk, and I was like, literally, guys, it's a 30 seconds, and it's a military cut. So 2 weeks later after that, I go in for a different role. By then I have cut the hair because now I've had so many auditions and I'm like, okay, I can shave it. I've had it for a week. So I go in, it's just real close crop cut military. And I'm ready. I'm standing by to go in next. And the door opens and the actor comes out who was in before me and they see me through the doorway. And they close the door and then the reader comes back and goes, they want you to read for Hammett again.
Ah.
And I'm like, oh, okay. But I'm not going to do better than I did 2 weeks ago prepped. So I take it. I've refreshed myself. I go in and I book the job.
Wow.
And I'm like, guys, really? You think this industry is so creative? And I'm like, you can't get over one strip of hair.
Mm-hmm.
And like by that time, even I still had a resume to support it. I had a killer audition. So that's how I ended up getting it 2 weeks later. And I started shooting 2 days after that.
Wow.
They were so character. So
now, did your role in the first one help you get the bigger role as the gorilla in War?
I don't think so. I really don't think so because it was a whole new director and a lot of new people behind it. So I don't think there was any. In fact, as is often the case, that the new director has a new vision, and Matt Reeves is so brilliant mm-hmm. that I think he probably would have preferred not to have any replacements, but luckily it didn't matter. It's not like they were going to see my face, so they're like, he's great. How cool is it that I played two different parts, a human
and that leads me to my next question. Red was an essential part to War of Planet of the Apes, but you were an ape. How does it feel? Yep. Do you feel like a little bit, I don't know what the right word is, not recognized outside to fans because you were a gorilla, but yet was such a vital part of a movie? How does that make you feel?
Well, I'll tell you another quick little anecdotal story. I was not at the time of that movie. I was not in a great place in my life. I had a lot of personal things going on, and a lot of uh, like divorce was happening. A
Hmm.
bunch of stuff was happening, and I was not in a good place. And we so when they offered the role, we you negotiate your fee, and I've been doing this 17 years at the time, and I ended up getting mad at them. I'm like, I've already been in one. I already gave you a deal in the first movie. And they're like, yeah, but there's a different movie. I'm like, yeah, but I gave you a deal in the first one. So now you can pay what I want you to pay, and a reasonable amount.
Yeah.
I'm like, you guys are going to, I've been doing this 17 years. You're not going to hardline me. But the attitude from everybody is like, but it's so big. It's such a big movie. I'm like, and I'll ask you this question. I'm going to quiz you. Other than Andy Serkis, name me one other famous motion capture actor.
In war,
Anybody famous.
I can't.
Exactly. And that's what I said to them. I'm like, nobody's going to fucking know who I am, people. I'm like, you either pay me or you give me some bump in my career. Like, give me something to launch my career off, because nobody's going to know me.
Yeah.
And they're like, but you can't turn this down. I'm like, yeah, I just did. And I ended up turning it down a few times. And it probably wasn't wise, but I was kind of in an angry place at the industry, that 17 years in there, you're trying to save money on me. Don't do that.
No. Especially with the budget that I assume they had to work with.
Dude, well, that was one of the arguments I gave. I was like, I looked up what your last movie did. You made $500 million. I'm not going to be the one to break your budget, man.
That's a great story. And you know what? You got the role. And I hope you got exactly what you asked for as well.
Yeah. And it wasn't outrageous.
No.
It was just what I deserved. So
now, playing Red Donkey, you call him a turncoat, which is absolutely appropriate. He's like that outside high schooler that wants to get in with the cool kids. In this case, it's the ape wanting to be more like the humans. And you have this big, overpowering ape that's Red Donkey, and he's a guard, but yet he's subservient to the humans and takes orders and is basically their slave. How the writing was more intense for Red than you said in the character for Rise. Did they really fill you in and give you I don't know if you can give a backstory to a gorilla, but what made Red tick in order for you to portray what they wanted?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it pretty extensively, and I think the major thing is they're talking about a war to genocide, right? Both sides were looking to commit genocide on the other species, and I think that the bottom line was that Red Donkey just thought that he wanted to be on the winning side, and I think when your very life and your existence is at stake, we like to all think that we're going to be the brave ones. We like to think that we're all going to be the heroes, but the truth is a lot of us will just side with, we've seen such atrocities through history of people just siding with the side because they're afraid.
Exactly.
There's an entire world war based on that, right? A lot of people just went because they were afraid. And I think Red Donkey, the saddest thing about that character is that it was a fear-based decision, really. He was afraid. He was afraid to lose his life. He was afraid to be on the losing side. And it doesn't make for the hero of the movie, but it makes it real.
Very realistic.
I think that's what made Red Donkey very real. Is that because that would happen. You would get turncoats. You would get people like, my life is more important than
your cause.
And I think that was the saddest part about his storyline, is that he really believed, and that was, of course, what Caesar and he kept having these little debates about. He's like, you're never going to be one of them,
No.
So, it's. I like to say that acting is simple in its design, complex in its execution, but simple in its design. Like the humans and human-like primates, it always comes down to like money, love, lust, power, jealousy. There's very simple themes, right? Mm-hmm. And if you look at those 5, that covers almost everything. Mm-hmm. And so I think it was a power and fear and It's he just he wanted to stay
He
alive.
wanted to
He was
stay
surviving.
alive. That's everyone's basic instinct right
Yeah,
there. Red has the best redemption in the movie. Very short lived, but at the end, when he sees Caesar, with all odds against the apes,
yeah,
still Caesar is wounded, but he's still fighting the fight. And the human orders you to get him the grenade launcher, and you turn around and you see Caesar in that moment. What do you think clicks in Red that makes him make that decision that he really would know that he would get killed for it? He
yeah.
basically sacrificed his life either for the cause or to help Caesar. What do you think clicked in Red in that moment when he saw Caesar battling on against all odds?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because going back to the story about me saying no so many times, uh, when I finally knew what the full story of the character was, I'm so glad I got the role. Like, too, I didn't know the full storyline. Like that wasn't given to me either. So, what a treat to play because I think, in answer to your question, I think he was trying to redeem his soul. He realized that he saw in Caesar everything he was not, and where jealousy and hurt and resentment had been fueling his anger towards him. In that moment, he saw all the things that he wasn't, and and I think it just hit him in a very deep primal place where he suddenly it was as much to redeem his own soul as it was to help Caesar.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, even they say there's no true altruistic kind of behavior, and I think even in that there was part of him that needed to. He probably he was rotting inside. All these things, betraying his people, betraying the cause, betraying the primates, and giving himself over. Like, I mean, we think of gorillas, they're like alpha primal beasts. Like these, they're not. They
No,
don't. They don't get shackled and do
no,
others bidding.
no.
So I think it was all of that. I think he realized he couldn't live anymore,
Yeah,
being this kind of Swiss cheese rotting kind of soul. And what a lovely thing again, because we don't think of animals as having souls, but clearly in that moment for him, there was only one answer to redeem himself.
and that was to save Caesar. I absolutely agree. And it was one of the most powerful moments in that whole movie. I love the twist that we had throughout the whole movie where we saw the de-evolution of the humans. They were
Yeah,
the ones getting sick, and
yeah.
of course the apes were immune to it. What did you think of that part of the story? I think it played in beautifully, and especially in the end when Woody Harrelson's character succumbed to it.
Yeah, yeah. I think again, it's brilliant. It's just brilliant storytelling and what fantastic writing for them. The way they introduced the virus, the way they introduced the elevated intelligence in the primates, and then also to help explain like the decimation of humanity. Like
Yeah.
because we know it's always interesting doing a story where you kind of know where it's going. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like telling a Bible story. We all know that Jesus ends up on the cross.
Yeah.
So how do you keep it interesting to get there, so to speak? And that's kind of true with this series too. We kind of know where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to make sense of it, but we have to keep it interesting and believable. And more than anything, I think one of the things that they did with the reincarnation of this series, is they made all that stuff really, really viable and believable. And I think that's a key ingredient of us being able to understand how could this happen,
Yep.
where all the humans suddenly are disappearing off the planet and the apes are like, really, come on,
Yeah.
how does that? Because you can't just say, it doesn't matter how intelligent they are, they didn't just take over militaries,
Exactly.
right? The virus affected the humankind negatively, and yeah, I think they just
And
brilliant
the
story.
apes thrived.
Yeah,
Now, I assume you have no information on this, so I'm going to ask you this as a fellow fan. Do you think it should stay as it is, the way War ended, and leave the franchise alone, or as let's say you were the filmmaker, okay, you were in
Mhm.
charge of this franchise. Do you go now and fast now that Caesar is dead, forward into the future and let's say pick up where the original Planet of the Apes was back in the 60s in a modern way? H- How do you feel? If you were the filmmaker, do you leave the franchise alone and just let it go? Or do you push it on to give us an actual remake of the original movie with Heston?
I don't know that an actual remake is the answer, but I think if you were going to explore continuing down that road, it all depends on the integrity of the script and the storytelling involved, obviously. Because you could have said, lots of people could have said, you should never have touched the originals to begin with.
Yeah.
It should never have been remade. So I'd like to leave it open to creative genius to be genius.
Yeah.
And the team behind this rebirth of the series is genius.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
all been. It's really brilliant. And so I don't know. It's like it's if they can pull it off, but it's all about keeping the integrity, right?
Yeah.
And if you can't, then don't. And I think that's always the thing. If you really can't continue the story with integrity to the same level of storytelling that you did with the first three, then leave it alone. But that's easier said than done.
I know, especially when we know it all comes down to money, and
Yeah,
they were so successful, they were so well done.
yeah.
I got to ask you this question. Uh,
Let me go one step further to your question too, because here's the thing: sometimes when you are part of cinematic history, you do. It's like I'm a big fight fan, I'm a big UFC MMA fan, and when you see your stars who are aging and starting to lose, and who were brilliant and nearly undefeated, and were like real true warriors, and you start to see them lose their ability and start to get knocked out or start to lose frequently and stuff. It's that argument with like a sports thing.
yeah,
Do we let them play because they love to play? Or do we say, hey guys, for your own safety and health, it's time for you to step back? It's a tough one to do,
it
right? Because,
is. It
oh
is.
man, I, I'm somebody who gets carried away. I love, like, there's movies and themes that I will literally like enjoy in my head for years afterwards,
Yeah, I'm the same
and
way.
you don't want people to mess with it.
Mm-mm.
But at the same time, you're like, if you could do it, I'm in.
I gotta ask you. You explained in the beginning of this interview with the dots how it was all filmed and your portrayal to a gorilla. Did they do that on a soundstage in a studio and then put you on the location through computer graphics, or were you there on set with the dots and the whole get up as
we
everyone
were
else was filming as well?
we were on set on location, and in fact, that major where a lot of the whole end stuff happens in the big compound, the military compound, that was like a quarter built reel, and then these giant. I've never seen green screens so high. They were probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 stories high,
Wow.
surrounding like a football field of space in a big circle, and then it facing the real set pieces. So we were on the whole time. You'd have power packs plugged in and helmet cams, and it's such a bizarre thing to have a helmet with a camera that comes in and is looking at your face like this the whole time while you're
Wow.
acting. So bizarre. And in fact, sometimes the other person's camera would get in front and we'd hook because it'd be too. If you got too close to the other person, the two cameras would hook together. You're like, hold on a second, they're gonna pull off.
Now, is it true that Red was supposed to be a chimpanzee, but because
It is.
they really wanted you for the role, they changed it to a gorilla?
I think what happened is during the process of it, they wanted. Um, I think as they watched me with Andy, and I'm a pretty large guy, especially in the acting world. I'm a fairly beefy guy, and I got a pretty good presence about me. And so I think as they watched us, they kind of just went, I think he's better suited as a gorilla than another chimp. Like we like the fact that it's there's a size difference, and I guess to be honest, my energy is probably more gorilla than chimp too.
And it also makes sense too. If you're going to put an ape to be a guard and work with the humans, you would
Yeah,
want that to be the gorilla. I don't know. To me,
yeah,
it makes sense.
yeah. And I think it was I don't know when they started doing that, but I think it definitely was like while the process was already in, they went, I think we're going to change who this guy is.
So when you auditioned, you thought you were going to be playing a chimpanzee.
Yeah, yeah,
Ah, that's
yeah,
interesting. That's very
yeah.
interesting. I did not know that. Now, VFX supervisor Anders Langlands, I hope I said that right, said they based your character Red on a silverback gorilla named Winston from the San Diego Zoo Safari Park. Did you ever actually get to see that gorilla or visit him?
I didn't get to visit him, unfortunately, but I did find videos of him, obviously, and yeah, he walks like a big gorilla standing on two legs. It's a terrifying thing to see because it's kind of spooky.
Uh huh.
It's human like in this 600-pound body.
Wow.
It's so bizarre. If you to the viewers, if you haven't ever seen him, YouTube him. It's frightening, and he looks friendly, but he's just like. It's just this massive thing that's just lumbering along, standing on two legs. It's kind of terrifying when you realize like how much weight he's got behind him.
I gotta
So
ask you, the most famous gorilla of all time. Are you a King Kong fan?
I am, yeah, I am,
He has to be like the most famous gorilla of all time.
yeah.
And now moving on, like I said, you've done a lot of stuff in your career. You were on Supernatural for almost its entire run, for only 10 episodes, but from the beginning all the way almost to the end. Were you surprised you kept getting the call to come back?
Well, here's the thing. I have this weird thing about my career. We were just talking about how it's interesting that I played two roles in the Planet of the Apes series, and I actually played two different roles in the
Yeah.
Supernatural series. So my first character was in season 2. I played Eli, who was a vampire who was part of a coven that had decided not to eat humans. And then in season 8, I came in as Benny, who
Benny.
also decided he wasn't going to eat humans. And then I was 10 episodes between. I mean, I was out for a bunch of seasons, and then 8 to 10, I was in a bunch of episodes and stuff. Um,
Oh, according to IMDb, it's between 2006 and 2019. That's 13,
it,
14 years.
yeah, but I was in season 2 for a couple episodes, and then a long break without, and then again. So they just count both characters, I think, in that timeline. Yeah.
Well, did you like coming to the Supernatural set? Was it just another gig, or did you really enjoy your time there?
Well, let me tell you, and I've spoken about this at cons and stuff that most of my career has been as a guest.
Hmm.
I've been a guest on many other people's shows, which is a tricky business to be. If you're the lead and you're the number one, and it's your show, you know everybody. Everybody's there to help you. You've made friends. You feel at home. You feel comfortable. And as a guest, you're always the person going, okay, I hope we get this right today. I hope I fit the genre. I hope everyone's nice to me. I hope I'm on my game. I hope I'm not nervous. I've done a lot of guest spots in my 20 years of this business, and that set was probably one of the most comfortable and sweet and genuine and giving sets I've ever been on. And the two lead boys, most of my scenes were with Jensen Ackles, and I've said this many times that he did something I've never experienced before. I was outside my trailer looking over my lines. We had about a 3 or 4 page scene, most of it my dialogue. He had a couple, 2 or 3 lines, and he came over. Now this is season 8, so he's already, he can memorize his stuff in his sleep.
Hmm.
He knows the character. He knows everybody. It's real comfortable for him, and he's also super busy and young family and all that stuff. So when you've been on that show that many times, you want your free time. The minute between shots and stuff is your free time. And he did something I've never experienced. He came over to me and said, hey, good? Is everything good? Is everybody treating you well? Blah, blah, blah. You want to run your lines with me? And I was like, you've got like 3 lines. I've got the rest of it. So he wasn't doing it for him. Like, it's normal for somebody who's got a lot of dialogue going, hey, can you run it with me? He wasn't running it for him. He was running it for me.
That says a lot about someone.
That says so much about somebody. Him as a leader, as one of the tops of the show, and also as a human. And then he says, do you want to be shot first, or do you want me to shoot first? That's what they do for people who are the leads,
Yeah.
who they want to send home early. Like, I've been on shows where not only was I not shot first, I was shot last, and the lead went home. And I'm shooting I'm like talking to the stand-in.
Wow.
So he was just phenomenal. Blew me away. I can't say enough good things about those boys, and Jared and Jensen. We've hung out socially a handful of times, and they're as nice on set professionally as they are off set, and I'm so grateful for Supernatural. But the fandom, as you probably know, is massive.
I hear those two guys love to bust chops. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're good boys. They're good boys, and the fandom's great. It's like having this big, slightly crazy family behind your back, or like at your back, because there's so many of them, and they're so quirky and loving and crazy, and it's been a great experience to be part of Supernatural.
And that leads me to my next question. You have done a lot of conventions, and I'm a big fan of conventions, horror, science fiction, all of them. And you go to these conventions and you're confronted with the fans, and you get to feel that the energy in the room. For someone who's never been to a convention, it's really even hard to describe in words. What was it like, going through COVID where everything was shut down? And for you in particular, where you're separated from the fan base and you can't do conventions, and
Yeah,
like all of us, we were stuck in quarantine. How
yeah.
did you personally handle that?
Uh, I'd like to say well, but that's not entirely true.
No, a lot of
uh,
people feel the same way.
I'm a person who can be intensely private at one hand and then intensely social and outgoing the next day. And so I like to be around people. In fact, I have this strange thing where if I have a script or if I need to like look at sides, I will often go to the pub and to do it because the white noise of a people and activity and a little bit of chaos around me makes me feel I can focus.
Hmm.
That if I'm alone at home with a empty house and not a soul around, that's the worst place for me to focus. I can't work on my piece that way.
Wow.
I think maybe it's because I had kids fairly young, so I got used to auditioning with like a kid on my hip and like daddy's daddy. So I don't know if it just that became part of it or what, but yeah, conventions. I've missed them. It's what a fantastic thing for us as actors to be able to connect with fans, and travel and there's so many pluses that come with conventions, and I love the fans, and I have truly missed being able to travel and being able to see them and being able to. I mean, we've all been deprived of hugs and handshakes and just normal human interaction. And for a guy like me, who's a very, very social person, very social butterfly, needs to be around people. It can be, it's a little depressing. I
Yeah,
don't know.
no, not just for you, for a lot of people. Trust me. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, the whole world needs a vacation, and we're still here. We're still doing. I was supposed to be in Texas next weekend for one, and they've had to shut it down
yeah,
because of COVID.
exactly.
Uh,
I mean, I'm going to be going to New York Comic Con, which is in person. Hopefully, that doesn't get shut down because if you watch the news, as we think we're reaching the end, it starts getting bad again, and you're like, when is this
yeah,
ever going to end? But
yeah,
moving on, you were in the very first episode of Black Summer.
yeah,
I have had the cast on as my guests. Great group of people. Uh, it sucks that you die so quickly. You were Rose's husband,
yeah,
and that scene is so memorable in the beginning where you try to get onto the truck,
yeah.
and they see that you're injured. They draw their guns. You know, Anna gets taken away. What was your experience? First of all, what did you think of the prospects of Black Summer when you got the role? Did you have an idea that this might become a hit? That this had a good story behind it?
Well, my best friend DJ Qualls was on the Z Nation, which is I guess was dubbed a little bit of a
Yeah.
prequel to it. And so I knew that it had legs because that show did well. So I knew that the possibility of it having legs was there. Um, and I that's kind of my jam too. I do like that kind of post-apocalyptic stuff.
Hmm.
Not particularly, not specifically zombies, but I like a zombie here and there.
Hmm.
But I like post-apocalyptic stuff. So I was jammed about that, and I thought that it could do well considering that the people had already had a formula with Z Nation. So and I was glad and I haven't watched it since, but I was glad that at least with the pilot episode that it was a little bit more grounded, a little bit more gritty. I like that. I like my post-apocalyptic stuff to be gritty and grounded. So I'm not surprised it did well. And I remember after the scene where I die, I'm in the living room and I die before the zombie stuff, and it's a real emotional scene. And they're like, "Wow, it's really good." I'm like, "Yeah, you should have made me a regular."
What was it like to get the makeup put on and be a zombie and all that good stuff?
It's it's a love hate thing because you love to see it, but you hate to sit in the chair for it. It's always so kind of uncomfortable and painful and time consuming, and they're in a rush to get it done, and you're like, yeah, but I can't. I need a drink of water, and and the contacts you put in, you're like, okay, I can't see anything. So, but when you do see the pictures, you're like, oh yeah, and it helps you get into character.
Mm-hmm.
If you're playing a zombie, it helps to feel like a zombie and look like a zombie, and the caked dried blood and stuff makes you feel like you've been in a car accident. So it kind of helps that way. But it's let's just say when Halloween comes around, I don't tend to pick heavily makeup characters.
Now, moving, I can't believe how fast time's flying. You were in a great movie, an A&E movie, Flight 93, which was based on the real story that happened on 9/11. How did you feel on taking on such a role, based on such a very real event?
It was a bit. I tell you, I mean, it was nerve wracking because we didn't, on big budget features, you get to like. There's people that can hook you up with the family and hook you up with a lot of information and people associated to the people. I don't think up until that point I'd never played a real life historical figure.
Yeah.
But it's not just a historical figure like playing Abraham Lincoln. It's like if I do a bad job playing Abraham Lincoln, Abraham's not going to be upset about it. His family's probably not going to be upset about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I was playing somebody who's a contemporary of mine, who died heroically in one of the nation's greatest, tragedies in the last 100 years. And so the fear of not being like, I ended up meeting his mom, Mark Bingham's mom, on Larry King. And it was the first time I met her, and I felt terrified because the truth is I didn't have footage of him. I saw a picture, but I didn't have video of him. There was nothing for me so I couldn't play him.
Yeah.
I just had to play the spirit of him that they wrote into the script, and thankfully, I think we did honor it, and it did very well on A&E, and I think we did honor it.
You did a great job on that film.
Thank you, but it was hard for me because again, with a historical figure, you've got lots of records of that person, especially if they were a famous person, right? Like if you're playing Hitler, you know what he looks like. You got videos of him. There's books and books and books and books and books you can read about him. But these guys were citizens, normal citizens that were thrust into this horrific situation, and there was no, as the actor tried to portray him, there was no resources for me. Certainly not in the time too. It's like you auditioned one day and 3-4 days later you're on set. It's I saw this great local Vancouver actor. I wish I could remember who to credit this to, but he was like, I think we should give Oscars to people who do terrible scripts, to the actors who do terrible scripts, because that's the hardest thing. Or to do a TV movie, you got 3 days.
Wow.
You don't have 6 months to prep your character. You don't have, it's like sometimes you're doing a Hallmark movie that's really great. And sometimes you're doing one that's not.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're doing a feature film that's got tons of money, but you're only getting 3 days to work on it. There's no perfect solution, but certainly when you're playing a real life contemporary hero,
you want to respect the family. Obviously, he was just an ordinary person, but they were heroes, and there's no other way to describe how that played out. Did you seek the role out? Was it just an audition? Did you know what you were auditioning for? How did you land that role?
It was just an audition, and I didn't like. Again, you get it the night before, you prep it for the next day, you don't have a lot of time to like. Thankfully, you don't have a lot of time to let it settle in. I think if I had realized how important that role was and how important this movie and the story was that night, I probably would have panicked the next day. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Like it just in a funny way, it's like I just had to do my best as quickly as I could. You take 2 hours to research the situation and then you make your choices and do your best. But no, it wasn't a role that I pursued. But obviously, when I read it, I was like, oh yeah, I want to be part of this.
And
I want to be part of this. But it's also scary to be part of it because how long do you wait to tell a story like that too, right?
and they
Like,
did it like 5 years after 9/11, I believe.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there were great movies. I forgot the one, The Tower with Nicolas Cage, that came out at the World Trade Center. I forgot what that movie was called. He was great in
yeah.
that. There were some good movies that came out. Now, moving on to some other stuff. Here's a little trivia thing that's on the internet. You have appeared in some of the most popular science fiction series in North America: X-Files, Stargate, SG-1, Smallville, Supernatural. Uh, it's just one of those quirky trivia things. But out of
Yeah.
all those, which one did you enjoy the most? Now, the X Files, we're going back to the 90s now. I love the X Files. I'm a huge fan of the X Files. Let's take that one, for example. What was your experience like on that?
X Files was my very first, regardless of how it looks on the credits on IMDb. X Files was my very first professional TV booking.
Wow.
So I'd come out of theater school. I did a year at the Shaw Festival doing theater. I'd come back. It was my second film and TV audition ever. And I'd come back. My second audition I booked playing X Files when it was huge at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so funny because I was a young actor, just starving young actor. Get on, and I remember I was my wife at the time. I go and I do my day, and I come back. She's like, "So how was it?" And all I could say was like, "The food was amazing." They had steak and like lobster, and because it was a Friday, it was a special day. They had a nice thing. Like, I was like, all I could talk about was the food. She's like, "Yeah, but how was the show?" I'm like, super slow. Same stuff over and over again 1,000 times. I was in the 30-second teaser for the episode, and I ended up getting 5 days of work. And I think I made like $5,000. And I was like, as a young, broke theater actor who just out of theater school was an understudy at Shaw Festival.
Yeah.
And suddenly I did 5 days of work and got $5,000. I was like, and got fed steak.
And
like,
you're on the X Files.
And I promptly put on like 25 pounds in the next 8 months.
Oh,
because I ended up working a lot. And of course, starving artist, I'm like, I show up, I better eat this.
you don't know when the next meal's coming.
Exactly, man.
You've been very outspoken supporter of the arts, and I've read some of your past interviews, and you have a real passion for the arts. Is that an accurate description of yourself?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. Yeah.
Now, would you ever want to become a teacher, teach acting down the line? What are your aspirations moving forward in your career?
I think I used to do some teaching, but I stepped back from that, and I'd be interested in doing some directing in the future. I think I have such respect and appreciation for teachers. I think that my career is due in part to teachers that have been in my life that kind of pushed me into acting when I was a young, troublesome kid. So I think I'd really like to direct, and I don't. Unfortunately, I don't have that mindset to go and get a project off the ground myself, and I just know that I need somebody. I need producers. I need somebody who does that technical stuff and that is savvy with that, because it's either you're that self-motivated guy to push and get a project made, or you're on a show long enough where they trust you as the actor to let you have a couple episodes.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the more likely scenario for me. but I do think I have a great eye for storytelling. I think I do know how to talk to actors really well and get great performances out of them. And and like anything, I'm now 47. I think I've grown and matured, and
Wow, we're
I
the
get
same
voice.
age. I'm turning
Oh,
47
cool.
in 2 weeks.
Oh, nice. Happy birthday.
Thanks. That is so
Um,
cool. If you think back, when did you find out that this is what you wanted to do, that you wanted to be an actor? And when you did you go to any kind of formal training, school, drama class, anything like that?
so I've told this story before. I'll give you the quick version. In fact, I was just chatting with this teacher on Messenger today. Judy Craig was my grade 6, 7, 8 teacher for drama and French at Rio Valley School in Cars, Ontario. And I lived in a group home close by and went to that school. And I was a troublemaker kid. I used to show up to school with a 40 ouncer of vodka and a gram of hash in grade 7. And I came from a very messed up background, so I was an angry kid, and I was displaced a lot. And I think that was my fourth home that I was in, fourth or fifth home. And she took me under her wing, so to speak, and basically forced me to audition for the school play. And I played Henny Penny, who's afraid the chicken who's afraid the sky's going to fall.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the next year, I played one of the evil stepsisters in Cinderella. And I'm like, I was this big kind of badass kid, but I liked her so much I didn't realize I liked acting, but I think I just did it because she wanted me to do it, but then I was also good at it.
Yeah.
And then she forced me to audition for an arts high school. And this is a true story. I've told it many times, and I'll never get tired of telling it because she deserves all the credit. She said, "Hey, I think you should go to this high school, Canterbury High School, for the arts." I went, "Okay." She's like, "Okay, well, I'm going to get you the application." I went, "Okay." And so she gets the application. It's got 2 monologues, and a couple other things in it. And she's like, "Okay, I'm going to coach you on this." And she coached me. And then she's like, "Okay, I'm going to drive you 45 minutes to the audition in Ottawa." And she drove me to the audition, drove me back, prepped me for it. 3 weeks later, we get a message I wasn't accepted because my grades were too poor.
Oh.
And she calls them and says, "Hey, why didn't he get accepted? He's fantastic." And I go, "No, his acting's fantastic, but his grades are so poor, we can't bring him out of the cashman." And she said, "I'm going to tutor him." And she tutored me.
Wow.
And I always get emotional when I say it. She tutored me and got me into the program. And I spent 5 years in that program preparing for theater school, which I eventually did in Vancouver at a place called Studio 58.
That is such a great story.
She did my life. So,
I mean,
yeah.
That is somebody who, I mean, can you ask for anybody to believe in you any more than that? I mean, wow. That's an amazing, and here you are, all these years later, you have a huge resume. Any regrets? What would you say is your biggest regret looking back on your career, if any?
They say it's not worth having regrets, but I've made plenty of mistakes that I do regret, and I hope someday I can move past them and not let them kind of live in the back of my brain.
Well, let me ask you this more specific question. I've had some actors say when I've asked them this question that they think they might have self-sabotaged an audition. Do you feel you've ever might have done that?
Oh yeah, but I think that's par for the course with actors. You're eventually going to have a few of those.
Yeah.
I think there was a time when I don't think I maximized my potential. And I didn't stay focused and disciplined enough. I think there was times when I let my ego get ahead of me. And I think there was times I wish I could have been kinder and gentler with other people and myself. And I think there's times when I wasn't I didn't realize, even when I started, the first time somebody ever looked at me and recognized me as an actor, I thought, I came from a pretty messed up background. I thought he was eyeballing me like he wanted to fight.
Yeah.
So I started giving him an eye, like, "Do you want to go?" And I think there's some truth to that I didn't realize, like, when I started becoming recognizable. I didn't realize that people were starting to look up to me in my community. I didn't realize the influence that I had on other people, and I think sometimes it was positive and sometimes it was negative, and so because you don't see yourself, you know what I mean? Like you don't see. A friend of mine said this, and I think there's some truth to it. He goes, people think that you change when you become famous, but the truth is, people around you change first.
Mm-hmm. They
Kind
start
of,
treating you differently.
yeah, and I was too stupid to notice that people were looking. Maybe some of the people in my community were looking up to me, and so I wasn't ready to be a role model, and I was. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think I was ready to understand. Um,
Yeah,
like
I totally understand what you're saying. It's the people around you, even those that you've known your whole life, just start treating you differently. And I think it's done subconsciously. And then you realize that you have a responsibility now. Like you said, you became a role model in your community. People start looking up to you. If you did grow up as the bad boy, the class clown, that's not really what you want to pass down to kids and
yeah,
your kids
well,
and whatnot.
everybody's going through your human experience. You know, you're growing and learning about yourself and your past and how it affects you and how it makes you make good decisions or bad decisions. And and you start to but when it's like I feel so terrible for people who are true, like massive celebrities who grow up in the limelight. It's like, and they make mistakes for everybody to see.
Yeah,
You don't realize that. Man, we're all still growing up.
yeah,
We're all still figuring things out, and we're all carrying the baggage of our past with us, and things that you don't realize. Like, yeah, I just didn't realize. Like, I'll tell you, there was a time when I was single for a period of time, I didn't realize it for a while, and it dawned on me like when people would be interested in dating me, I'm like, are you interested in dating me because you like me and you think I'm funny and charming and kind, or are you dating me because I'm on TV?
exactly.
And so that became a real weird thing, and that goes with a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
You say something and people interpret it wrong because you don't realize that they're hanging on your words, or
Mm-hmm.
or that, it's like
Yeah.
it's just, yeah. And I'm, yeah, I just
Yeah,
so
I totally, I mean, I get it, I understand. And it's weird. I guess that's the only real word to describe it. It's really
yeah.
weird. Ty, I can't believe this hour has just flown by. I feel we can sit here and talk for hours. Thank you so much for
My
coming
pleasure.
on here and sharing. I love it when I get like people like yourself who share and are open and not afraid to share good and bad things from your past. I think it's refreshing. And I think
Thank
we
you.
need a lot more of that openness and discussion. And I think you're awesome. And I want to thank you
Thank
so much for doing this. Uh,
thank you for
it's been our pleasure to have you here. Thank you to our viewers for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed this hour as much as me and Ty have. Any final thoughts before we go you want to share with your fans or the audience?
I just wanted to say, everybody stay healthy, stay safe, get vaccinated. We're almost through this, and I know what a difficult time it is for everybody globally. And
Yeah,
I think we just try to be kind to each other, be gentle with yourself, take care of yourself, and we'll get through this together and keep growing, keep healing. Lots
absolutely.
of love.
Thank you so much, Ty. Thank you so much to everybody for tuning in. Until next time, on behalf of Ty Olson and myself, stay safe and stay walking. Good night.
Thank you, guys.